the Knights Templar. Founded in 1118 by a French knight named Hugues de Payens and 8 companions who offered to protect pilgrims on the road from Jaffa to Jerusalem. 8 men. That was the whole order. Within a century, they owned castles or 2 continents, ran the medieval equivalent of an international banking system, and had half the crowned heads of Europe in their debt. That last part is the thing worth remembering. In 1307, King Philip IV of France needed to clear his debts. He found a more efficient solution than repayment. One Friday morning, he had every Templar in France arrested simultaneously, tortured them into confessing to heresy, sodomy, and spitting on the cross. Had the last Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, burned alive on a small island in the Seine. The debt disappeared with him. Philip kept the money. The Templars did not survive. But the idea that a military order could be too powerful to be allowed to exist, that idea survived just fine. The Knights Hospitaller began as a hospital. That is not a metaphor. Around 1099, a group of merchants from Amalfi set up a hostel and infirmary in Jerusalem for sick pilgrims. No weapons, no military purpose, just beds and medicine. Within 30 years, they were one of the most formidable fighting forces in the Crusader state. When Jerusalem fell, they retreated to Acre. When Acre fell, they went to Cyprus, then Rhodes, then Malta. In 1565, Suleiman the Magnificent sent the largest Ottoman fleet ever assembled to take Malta from them. 40,000 men against 700 knights. The Hospitallers held for 4 months. The Ottomans left. Napoleon eventually took Malta without a fight in 1798. The order relocated to Rome. They are still there. They issue their own passports. They have a seat at the United Nations. A hospital that became an army, that became a sovereign nation that outlasted every empire that tried to destroy it. The Teutonic Knights started in the Holy Land and failed there, outcompeted by the Templars and Hospitallers on every front. So they pivoted north. They marched into Prussia, which was pagan, and began converting it the only way they knew how, by the sword. Within a century, they had carved out a monastic military state across Prussia and the Baltic, their own territory, their own laws, their own economy, their own walls. They ran what they called the Reisen, Crusades into Lithuania. Fashionable adventure holidays for European nobles who wanted to kill people with papal blessing. English knights went, French knights went. Henry Bolingbroke, the future King Henry IV of England, went twice. The whole enterprise ended at the Battle of Grunwald in 1410. A Polish-Lithuanian coalition destroyed their army. The Grand Master died in the field. The monastic state collapsed in stages over the following century. But the territory they had conquered became Prussia. Prussia became the Kingdom of Prussia. The Kingdom of Prussia became the German Empire. A military order accidentally built modern Germany. Those 3 changed the world so visibly that even the history books could not ignore them. The Order of Santiago, founded in 1170 in Castile to protect pilgrims on the road to Santiago de Compostela. Their cross is shaped like a sword. The blade points down. The crossguard curls into flower-tipped arms. A scallop shell sits at the top, the symbol of the pilgrim road they were sworn to protect. They were the most unusual major order in one specific respect. Their knights were allowed to marry. Every other order required celibacy. Santiago looked at that requirement and decided it was unnecessary. They controlled over 400 properties at their peak and could field 1,500 men. The Reconquista ends. The enemy stops coming. The cross becomes decorative. But while the enemy was still coming, Santiago was the reason the road stayed open. Which brings us to the order that shamed the Templars into history. The Order of Calatrava, 1158. The Templars handed back a frontier fortress to King Sancho III of Castile. Their reason was that it was too dangerous to hold. The Templars, the most powerful military order in Christendom, handed back a castle because they were frightened. A Cistercian abbot named Raymond of Fitero was standing nearby. He said he would take it. The king said yes. The monks garrisoned the fortress. The Almohads did not take it. The order that shamed the Templars became the first Spanish military order and one of the most powerful forces in the Reconquista. Their cross is red, Greek in shape, with each arm ending in a 3-petaled flower tip, still exists today as a Spanish royal honor. The Templars are gone. Calatrava is still there. Right beside it, almost indistinguishable to anyone who was not paying attention, was the Order of Alcantara. Same cross as Calatrava, same Cistercian rule, same Reconquista mission. They petitioned the Pope for a different color to distinguish themselves from Calatrava. The Pope agreed. This is genuinely the entire story of their founding distinction. What matters is what came after. They accumulated enormous wealth across the Reconquista, became a major political force in Leon, and eventually got absorbed into the Spanish crown like every order that grew too powerful and too rich. The Green Cross survives as a Spanish royal honor. The lesson about what happens to powerful orders did not seem to stick. Portugal watched off of this and drew its own conclusion. The Order of Avis, Portugal's military order, followed the Calatrava rule, Green Cross, White Mantle. Their Grand Master in 1383 was a man named John of Avis, illegitimate son of the Portuguese king, not in line for anything. When the Portuguese throne fell vacant and Castile moved to claim it, John of Avis led the resistance. He won the Battle of Aljubarrota in 1385, defeated the Castilian army, became King John I of Portugal, founded the House of Avis. His dynasty sponsored Vasco da Gama, Bartolomeu Dias, and the entire Age of Discovery. The Portuguese empire that stretched from Brazil to Macau was built on the back of a military order whose Grand Master decided he wanted to be king. He was not wrong to try. And speaking of Portugal making opportunistic decisions, the Order of Christ, founded 1319. These were the Knights Templar, not symbolically, literally. When Pope Clement V suppressed the Templars in 1312, Portugal refused to persecute them. King Dines simply renamed them, kept their assets, kept their expertise, and gave them a new cross. A red cross with a smaller white cross centered inside it, a cross within a cross. Henry the Navigator served as their Grand Master. Vasco da Gama sailed to India under their cross. Bartolomeu Dias rounded the Cape of Good Hope under their cross. The order Philip IV had burned alive came back under a different name and found a sea route to Asia. Their cross still appears on the Portuguese armillary sphere, which still appears on the Portuguese flag. The Templars lost the battle. They won everything else. Aragon was watching Portugal and thinking exactly the same thing. The Order of Montesa, founded 1317, 2 years after the Templars were suppressed. That gap is not a coincidence. James II of Aragon watched Philip IV burn the Templars, watched Portugal quietly rename them and keep the money, and decided he wanted the same arrangement. He petitioned the Pope, got his approval, transferred the Templar properties to the new order before anyone could argue about it. Their cross is black, same flower-tipped shape as Calatrava, but black. The Aragonese did not consult the Pope about the color. The Pope did not complain. 3 kingdoms, 3 solutions to the same problem. The Templars lost everything. France, Portugal, and Aragon divided the estate between them. Nobody mourned for long. There was one order that did not need to absorb anyone. The Order of the Holy Sepulchre, founded around 1099, the oldest continuously active order on this list. Their job was simple: guard the tomb of Christ, keep the Church of the Holy Sepulchre standing, protect the pilgrims who came to kneel at it. They never had the army the Templars had, the navy the Hospitallers built, or the territorial ambition the Teutonic Knights pursued. They just stayed. Jerusalem fell. They stayed. The Crusader states collapsed. They stayed. Today, the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre has 30,000 members worldwide. Heads of state, senior politicians, Catholic laypeople with the means to matter. Their primary function is funding the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem, keeping a Catholic institutional presence alive in one of the most contested pieces of ground on earth. The order that guards the tomb of Christ now does it with checkbooks rather than sword. In that particular neighborhood, the checkbook is probably more useful. And then there was the order nobody wanted to stand next to, the Order of St. Lazarus, founded around 1119 at a leper hospital in Jerusalem. The knights who contracted leprosy in the Crusades were not sent home. They were transferred here. They still fought. Men with bandaged hands and faces destroyed by disease, riding into battle because they had nothing left to lose and a vow left to keep. At the Battle of La Forbie in 1244, they rode into a Mamluk force that destroyed the combined Crusader army. The Lazarites were annihilated almost entirely. They rebuilt, they kept fighting. They eventually merged with the Order of Saint Maurice in 1572, and the combined order survives today as a dynastic honor of the former Italian royal family. An unbroken institutional line from a leper hospital in 12th century Jerusalem to a ceremonial title in modern Rome. Most institutions do not survive that long without leprosy slowing them down. Now we move north, into the Baltic, into the cold, into the worst institutional decisions in the history of military orders. The Livonian Brothers of the Sword, founded 1202 by the Bishop of Riga to Christianize the Baltic by force. They made one catastrophic decision. They accepted anyone willing to fight, regardless of character or motivation. The men they attracted were not the devout, they were the violent. Their cruelty turned every potential convert into a permanent enemy. Instead of Christian subjects, they produced Christian corpses, and everyone else who had witnessed the process and drawn their own conclusion. In 1236, the Lithuanians and some magicians destroyed them at the Battle of Saule. The Grand Master died, most of the knights died. The survivors were absorbed by the Teutonic Knights the following year. An order that failed not because of its enemies, but because of who it recruited. The institution that replaced them, the Livonian Order, governed modern Latvia and Estonia as a military theocracy for over 3 centuries. Then Ivan the Terrible launched the Livonian War in 1558 and tore it apart. Their collapse created a power vacuum that Russia, Sweden, Poland, and Denmark spent the next 60 years fighting over. The wars that followed shaped the entire Northern European balance of power for a century, all of it cascading from one order's dissolution. But even that collapse did not happen in isolation. It was the end of a chain that started much earlier, with an order so badly built that its failure made everything that followed inevitable. The Order of Dobrzhin, founded 1228 in Poland to defend the frontier against pagan Prussian raids. Chronically underfunded, repeatedly overwhelmed, absorbed by the Teutonic Knights in 1235 after 7 years of failing to hold the frontier. They were not even the first to fail. The Prussian Brothers, a precursor group standing up a military order in the same region, collapsed in 6 years before Dobrzhin existed. Poland was standing up and dissolving military orders faster than it could staff them. That is not a region with good options. That is a region that has run out of them. The failure of Dobrzhin is what invited the Teutonic Knights into Prussia in the first place. That invitation reshaped Eastern European history for the next 3 centuries. 7 years. One under-equipped order that could not hold its ground. The consequences lasted forever. Buried in a cobblestone street in Prague is the order that got everything right. They were called the Knights of the Cross with the Red Star, founded in Bohemia in the 13th century. Their emblem is a red 8-pointed star, 8 sharp diamond-shaped points radiating from a center, like a compass rose on a black mantle. They are the only medieval military order that originated in Central Europe and never stopped existing. Still based in Prague, their Grand Master still receives a ceremonial sword at investiture. 8 centuries of history, or cobblestone street in the old town, and the tour groups photograph the astronomical clock instead. The order has outlasted empires, plagues, 2 world wars, and Soviet occupation. It will outlast the tour groups. Further west, a banking dynasty decided it needed an army. The Order of Saint Stephen, founded in 1561 by Cosimo I de' Medici, Grand Duke of Tuscany. A Florentine banking dynasty decided it needed a military order. This is entirely on brand. Their mission was fighting Ottoman corsairs in the Mediterranean. They fought at the Battle of Lepanto in 1571, the naval engagement where the combined Christian fleet stopped Ottoman expansion into the western Mediterranean cold. The Medici's private order of knights fighting under papal blessing, turning the tide of a civilizational confrontation. Abolished in 1859 when Tuscany was annexed into the Kingdom of Sardinia. Even banking dynasties eventually run out of runway. The Order of Saints Maurice and Lazarus arrived at its strange existence by merger. In 1572, The Order of Saint Maurice, a Savoyard chivalric order founded by the same man who briefly became an antipope, absorbed the Italian branch of the Leper Knights. What you get when a dynastic honor society absorbs a hospital full of knights with leprosy is apparently an order that fought Ottoman expansion and survives today as a ceremonial honor of the former Italian royal family. The institutional line runs unbroken from a 12th century leper hospital in Jerusalem to a 21st century dynastic title in Rome. Medieval institutions have remarkable staying power when nobody remembers to abolish them. And then there were the orders built not on conquest, but on negotiation. The Mercedarians, founded in Barcelona in 1218 by a merchant named Peter Nolasco. Their mission was ransoming Christian captives from Muslim captivity in North Africa. Other orders fought to prevent capture. These men went in after, which required traveling to North Africa, sitting across a table from men who held Christian slaves, and haggling over the price of a human life. Their founding vow contained a clause that no other order required. If the money ran out during a negotiation, members swore to offer themselves as hostages in place of the captives until the ransom could be raised. They would walk into captivity voluntarily. That is not a metaphor, that is a legal obligation they accepted at ordination. They were not alone in this business. Another order had been running the same operation for 20 years longer, from the other side of the Pyrenees, with a different cross and the same impossible vow. The Trinitarians, founded in 1198 by John of Malta and Felix of Valois. Their cross is a Greek cross, top arm red, left arm blue, the other two white. 3 colors for the Trinity. Between the Trinitarians and the Mercedarians, historians estimate they ransomed over 1 million captives across their combined histories. 2 orders, 2 countries, the same impossible vow. Negotiating human beings out of slavery 1 transaction at a time across 6 centuries of Mediterranean history. The logistics of mercy at scale. The Order of St. James of Altapascio had been doing something similar even longer. Founded around 1075 in Tuscany, one of the oldest orders on this list, predating the Templars by over 40 years. They protected pilgrims on the road to Rome and ran hospitals along the routes. Their symbol was the Tau cross, a T-shaped cross with no top arm, like the letter T. They operated for nearly 4 centuries before pilgrimage patterns shifted and they quietly faded from relevance. No dramatic end, no suppression, no final battle. They just became unnecessary and stopped. Which is, in its own way, the best possible ending for an order whose entire purpose was keeping people alive. The Order of St. Michael of the Wing never got that clean an ending. Founded in Portugal in 1171, their symbol is an angel wing beside a small cross, unlike anything else on this list. Their early history is disputed. They disappeared in the early 18th century and were controversially restored in 1828, with legitimacy that historians still argue about. They appear in almost no mainstream histories. Their founding is unclear, their revival is contested. Their symbol appears on no other order before or since, which means if you mention them at a dinner party, you will almost certainly be the only person in the room who knows they exist. That is its own kind of power. The Order of Mountjoy understood that ambition and capability are not the same thing. Founded in Castile in the 1170s, confirmed by the Pope in 1180, operated briefly in Spain and the Holy Land, merged with Calatrava around 1188. Total lifespan, approximately 15 years. Someone saw what the Templars had built and thought, we could do that here. They could not, but they tried, and the trying tells you everything about how contagious the military order idea had become in 12th century Christendom. The model was spreading faster than anyone could execute it. The Order of St. George of Alfama never tried to be more than it was. Founded 1201 in Aragon at Alfama Castle on the Ebro River. Held that one castle for nearly 2 centuries. Eventually merged into Montesa in 1399 when it had shrunk to near irrelevance. Not every order changes history. Some of them just hold a castle on a river for 200 years and quietly disappear. There is a certain dignity in that. The Order of the Band had no interest in dignity. It had interest in power. founded by Alfonso XI of Castile in 1332. No religious vows, no crusading mission, no cross. Members wore a red diagonal sash, the banda, from left shoulder to right hip. This was the first purely secular chivalric order in Iberia, essentially a royal loyalty program dressed in chivalric language. The king wanted a mechanism for binding his nobility to him personally, rather than to the church or to abstract crusading ideals. It worked well enough that the model spread across Europe over the following century. Most of the ceremonial orders that exist today, the Garter, the Golden Fleece, the Legion of Honor, trace their conceptual DNA back to experiments like this one. A red diagonal sash on a Castilian nobleman in 1332 as the ancestor of every modern state honor. The Order of St. George of Hungary formalized that idea before Castile did. Founded in 1326 by King Charles I of Hungary, the first fully secularized military order in history. No religious rule, no crusading obligation. All Hungarian nobility swore loyalty through it to the king personally. It was a political instrument wearing chivalric clothes. The idea spread immediately. Within a century, secular orders were appearing across Europe. The Order of the Garter, 1348. The Golden Fleece, 1430. The Order of St. Michael, 1469. All of them variations on the same concept, one obscure Hungarian king formalized in 1326. His name is in almost no history books. His idea is in almost every modern government. The Order of the Holy Spirit of Montpellier had the same founding mission as the Hospitallers, and a fraction of the fame. Founded in 1170 in southern France, ran hospitals across France and Italy for 4 centuries, never achieved the recognition the Hospitallers had, despite a nearly identical purpose. The difference was geography. They stayed close to home. The Hospitallers went to Jerusalem, then Rhodes, then Malta. They accumulated legend with every forced relocation. The Holy Spirit Order stayed in southern France and became a footnote. History rewards the people who go somewhere interesting, even if they were pushed. The Knights of St. Thomas of Canterbury were founded by a king who would himself be replaced by a king who dissolved them. Richard I of England founded the order at Acre in 1191, dedicated to Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, murdered in his own cathedral 21 years earlier. They served primarily as a hospitaller order for English pilgrims. Never a major fighting force, survived for 3.5 centuries. Dissolved by Henry VIII during the Reformation. Henry VIII dissolved a great many things. An order founded in honor of a king's murdered archbishop, dissolved by a king who would go on to murder his own advisors. The English have always had a complicated relationship with their archbishop. When Luther split Europe in the 16th century, the German branch of the Hospitallers faced a choice: break with Rome or dissolve. They broke with Rome. The Order of St. John, Bailiwick of Brandenburg. They kept the name, they kept the traditions, they kept the hospital. Still active today as a Protestant charitable organization. Ambulance services in Germany. Medical missions in southern Africa. An 800-year-old institution that survived the Reformation, 2 world wars, and the division and reunification of Germany. The cross is still the same. The Catholic Hospitallers and the Protestant Hospitallers are both still running. Same origin, same cross, opposite sides of the schism that split Europe in 2. They never reconciled, they never needed to. The mission was always bigger than the theology. Every name on this list was chosen by the men who carried it, except one chosen by the men who refused to let it die. The sword, Brethren of Felin, a regional designation for the Livonian order during certain periods, named after Felin Castle, modern Viljandi in Estonia, sometimes listed separately in specialist Baltic histories. Functionally the same institution as the Livonian branch of the Teutonic Knights. But the name persisted locally because the men on the ground still identified with their original order long after the formal absorption. The men of Felin kept calling themselves the Sword Brethren, decades after the paperwork said otherwise. Because identity is harder to dissolve than an institution. Governments and popes can suppress an order on paper in an afternoon. Getting the men who lived it to agree that it is over takes considerably longer. This is not unique to the medieval Baltic. The Order of the Dragon was founded in 1808 by King Sigismund of Hungary, who would later become the Holy Roman Emperor. This was not a localized monastic experiment. It was a massive, high-level political and military alliance disguised as a chivalric brotherhood. Its primary mission was to defend Europe against the unstoppable westward advance of the Ottoman Empire. The knights wore a heavy gold medallion depicting a dragon crushed by a flaming cross, its tail wrapped tightly around its own neck, symbolizing the ultimate defeat of the pagan enemy. Its membership list read like a roster of the most ruthless warlords in Eastern Europe. Its most famous member was a Wallachian prince named Vlad II, who was so proud of his induction into the order that he changed his name to Dracul, meaning the dragon. His son, Vlad III, would inherit the name Dracula, carrying the dark legacy of a medieval military order straight into global mythology. The men who built these institutions believed they were building something eternal. Some of them were right. Most of them did not survive to see what. Ash and Iron. Every week, the story's history kept to itself.
Find us on YouTube and Facebook.